Great, thanks everyone. I know we're getting to the end of the day, so hopefully everyone had a refresh of coffee for the afternoon. So I'm really excited to be here with these two lovely ladies. They've got a lot of experience, and I think our goal today is, when we all read the title of this presentation for us, it's really about how do we extend the life of content across the revenue cycle, across the organization. And I think we're all aware that content is expensive, content takes time to produce, and so we need to be real about how we can use it and how we can extend that life. So I'm gonna let both of these ladies introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about what they do, and then we'll dive into some questions. Start with you, Ciamara.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ciamara Taylor, and I look after marketing for NASDAQ's Governance Solutions business, and that is particularly with our board portal platform, as well as any solutions and services that surround that apply to governance in the world of governance and governance professionals.
Great, Kyla.
Kyla Bongiovanni, and as Dana mentioned, I'm at Microsoft, and I'm in the US CMO, which is the Central Marketing Organization, and I actually lead 15 of the top strategic accounts, specifically in the manufacturing industry. And so I have a team there are 10 of us, and each of us have somewhere between 10 and 15 accounts in which we nurture. So I manage the manufacturing.
Great. So why don't we start by each of you telling us a little bit about how you use content in your role, how you're creating content. Just give us a little background there so we can dive into some questions.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to start. So when I joined, I actually moved internally from another business and identified an opportunity to really elevate the presence of our governance solutions. You just elevate the presence of the governance solutions to our buyers and to our potential buyers, to our influencers in ways that really wasn't happening before in that business. And so we took, pretty meaty content pieces that the business had worked on previously through the help of our own corporate secretary, which is our target audience mostly for this business, corporate secretaries, around the world, and identified ways to break down those big meaty pieces that she was contributing to into smaller digestible pieces. And so we identified, close to 40 pieces of content that we could create just off of 6 white papers, because they were meaty, they had a lot of content already in them, and we didn't really have to recreate the reel, just look at them from a different lens. And so that's how we're approaching content right now, is just identifying just different ways that it can be consumed and trying to just lather, rinse, repeat where it makes the most sense.
Great. Ella?
Yeah, and for the strategic marketing team, so we call it strategic marketing, but you guys can think of strategic marketing as ABM, right? We're very much doing customized content per each of these accounts, right? So for example, in manufacturing, one of the accounts is, for example, Caterpillar, right? So everything that we do in the way of communication to Caterpillar is going to be based on something customized. We're never going to send Caterpillar something that isn't customized. And so what we're playing with are things like custom hubs, right? And I'll kind of talk a little bit more about those later. But custom hubs are a way where everything that we do to Caterpillar, for example, whether it's an email or they come to an event or whatever that dialogue is with them, we are always leading them back to that hub. So as we create campaigns, we're having everything go back to that hub, and we're really watching for indicators on what's going on within that account, right? So one of the things that we continue to play with is how can we get more bandwidth with those hubs. I think the challenge for all of us is, okay, well, you're Microsoft, great, you probably have a ton of content. We do. Right? There is an industry team that's a completely different team, a completely different group, and that industry team is doing some phenomenal work as it relates to manufacturing or retail, right? So what I do is I take a look at the generic manufacturing content that's being developed, and then I take that's about 80% there for my accounts, I take that content and then I'm bringing it the full 100% by doing that last 20% is sort of the customized piece, right? And so I think, when you think about how to customize for your accounts, can you take content that is a little bit more generic, and can you customize that just slightly by tweaking it, even if it's branding, even if it's using the name of the company, right? So you're kind of calling them out like, hey, Caterpillar, blah, 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 right? On a very basic level, can you give them the perception that it's a customized piece of content for them?
Great. So and you kind of started to hit on it, so you are using content that's already there. Are you also creating some net new content, or is your goal to try and leverage, with some customization, is your goal to try and leverage existing content as much as possible?
It's a bit of both. I mean, I definitely leverage, to my point earlier, I definitely leverage the content that's being developed within our team, like for industry, and then we're taking it and we're customizing that. If it doesn't sort of exist, then we're definitely customizing as well.
Yep.
So we take a look, and you and I were talking a little bit earlier. We actually look at the imperatives of the company, right? So using Caterpillar as an example, we will look using their annual report. We will look at their imperatives, and we will work backwards from that so that we make sure that when we're talking to these manufacturing accounts, we're not going to them in a way that's, oh, here's Microsoft products and services. What we're doing is we're going to them with very much solution selling, right? We're all about solution selling. So all of the custom content that we do as strategic marketers is very much solution oriented. So we're going to them with their issues, with their problems, with what's important to them. And so sometimes we'll find a gap in, again, the content. So we do develop specific content when it's needed for accounts, absolutely.
Great. And Seema, we were talking earlier that, part of you were able to create all of this content out of 6 white papers, but kind of something new for you is supporting the sales team too, and not just giving them content to use, but providing them with training content, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, sure. So there was not a whole lot of enablement that was going on within the group, and so we were looking for ways for them to be able to use this content within context at the right moment. All the kind of perfect cocktail of how we want sales to use our stuff. And after spending some time with them, interviewing them, even listening in on some of the kind of pitches that they would do, cultivated a couple of common objections that they were receiving, some frequently asked questions, some questions that they needed to think about before they went into talk to a company secretary or a general counsel or a CFO or whoever the buyer at that moment might be, and then also customizing it, kind of to some of your point where not every company secretary is going to be the same at every company, of course. A company secretary at a bank or a corporate secretary in a healthcare or hospital system, they're going to have different concerns. And so knowing when to ask those questions for the segment that they're relating to is really important. And so we are currently creating some materials around what those objections might look like, what might be important to those types of buyers that they're meeting with, and in what ways does our product help to talk to those challenges without going in about, here's our beautiful product and here's our beautiful demo of that product, because they're going to be, it sounds like a no-brainer, but it happens way more than I was comfortable to admit.
Great. Well, and I think it was great too, because you're not treating the salespeople like second-rate citizens. I mean, you're taking time to design content that's going to appeal to them too, as they're an audience.
Exactly.
For you.
It's going to, it's going to be designed. It's going to be, look just as beautiful as an ebook would look. It's going to have the branding. It's going to, they need to kind of feel it and embrace it as if it was a piece of content that they were going to share with a client. They absolutely cannot share that piece of content with a client, but the whole idea is for them to experience it the same way that their potential customer would.
Great. So since we're talking about the ecosystem of content, and I'll throw you both for a little bit of a loop, if you guys choose to create new content, so let's say there's something, it's a gap, is there an opportunity for other areas of the company to try and leverage that? Or is by the time it's getting to you both, is it a little too granular at that moment and not fitting necessarily for going kind of back the other way?
I mean, I can answer that. I think it's a little bit of both. There are times when I think you can take something, and we definitely share with everybody. So whatever I do, I share out with the rest of my team, because if I do something for manufacturing and it's a really cool piece of content, we can always spin that, and you know, it's going to take a little bit of rewriting, but we can spin that for retail.
Great.
And then it's a lot of what we do in terms of strategic marketing is also sharing. I think equally as important is how it's disseminated. We were talking earlier, I can't remember the last time I read a white paper, downloaded and read a white paper more than maybe a couple pages. Yeah. So I think equally important is thinking about how do your customers want to consume the content. Of course, you know, what level within the funnel are they, right? They're going to be more interested in spending a little bit more time with your content if they're further down the pipe. So I do think that's really important to think about, as well as, of course, what the content is. And this is an example, I just noticed this was actually put up, which is great. This is an example of a sort of a journey to get to those content hubs I was talking about. And we're actually doing some really cool stuff right now with follows and demand base. So one of the big challenges, and that's what I'm using to house my content hubs, because the marketers, the strategic marketers, they can actually do all that without a web designer, right? So it's really key for us to be able to go and add content, you know, at any moment in time. And what we're doing is, you know, one of the problems for us was, okay, great, I have 15 manufacturing accounts. I can't possibly go, I don't have enough time in the day to go and customize 15 different hubs. So what we're doing is we're creating one manufacturing hub, and we are then lying in with demand base for IP info, and then that's actually brought into the manufacturing hub. So now when Caterpillar goes to the manufacturing hub, it's actually populated with that data, right? So it'll say demand base, and maybe we've coded it where there's a few pieces of specific content just for Caterpillar, but then maybe 80% of the rest of your page is actually kind of generic manufacturing content, right? But you've then enabled it to feel very customized for the account. So that's something, and now instead of doing 15 hubs, I'm doing one, and then we're able to really with dynamic content, we're really able to target as the manufacturing accounts use us.
Right.
I think it would be, you know, similar, you know, in terms of doing a little bit of both. I mean, I think that at NASDAQ, one of our challenges is that there are quite a few businesses, and a lot of the businesses share, you know, similar targets in terms of accounts. May not be the same buyer at those accounts, but a lot of the same targets. And so, and we're creating content that, you know, maybe like 60% of it is relevant to other businesses, and you know, the rest is you know, way more in line with the business that's creating it. But for example, you know, we have an IR intelligence you know, solutions and services, and any time that they talk about social activism, or if they talk about ESG, I'm like, hello, can I please have, you know, so how can I be leveraging that? And so we've done a lot better, just even in the last 6 months, of identifying, okay, what are, you know, the paths that we're taking and the themes that we're going to go for in terms of creating our content, and, you know, where you guys may be working on something that I might be able to leverage and vice versa. You know, we want to be able to do that. Now, in terms of distributing it, I probably need a whole nother panel for that. Because of some of that overlap, it could become very challenging, and at times very easy to oversaturate some of these accounts. So we're really looking at ways to try and streamline that. There's a couple of tools that we're using, but we're really trying to create more account-based programs, explore that. They're very much in their infancy, so I really couldn't go into a whole lot of details about them, but we're really trying to discover ways that we could be talking to specific accounts and prioritizing those accounts with, you know, very segment-specific content, because it's more about the segments for us, and you know, there's accounts that fit into that segment, but they're all kind of buzzing about the same thing. If we used kind of healthcare as an example, you know, if you're in the US and you're a hospital system, HIPAA compliance is most definitely going to be on your list of important things to talk about. You know, we need to make sure that we're calling out, you know, what's important to bubble up about what our platform does to support that, but also, turn it around and understanding that what about HIPAA compliance is important for that,
Right.
for those clients. And so there's a couple of different ways that we're doing that. It's just all it's just starting right now. And so I mean, even measuring it is going to be a little difficult because we got to let it test and run for a little bit before we can come back.
Right. Well, and I think, and Kyla, you can probably talk to this, I think, and there's a lot of buzz about ABM, and this, I know this session isn't about that, but the reality is that we're all trying to get there. Yeah. And we were just talking how, you have 16 accounts, but 16 is a lot. When we get to a personalization and customization stage, and so I'd love for you to share a little bit, because we were talking a little bit about the personalization, right? And how that wasn't as easy as we thought maybe it was going to be, and yeah.
Yeah, ABM and custom content is a challenge, right? I'm constantly trying to figure out, because in a perfect world, I would have 5 accounts that I lived and breathed with my account teams, right? Because I'm their only liaison for anything marketing. And these accounts have probably 20 people from Microsoft that work on them, right? All sort of sales, because we have so many different products, right? So you have a salesperson for every product group, and they're all sort of bubbling up to one account executive, which is basically the main salesperson for that account, and then there's me, the marketer, right? So I'm constantly looking for ways to sort of hack the system, given that I don't have 5 accounts and that I need to branch out to the 15, 16. I'm constantly looking to hack. And the follows boards is a perfect example where I'm now creating one board instead of 15, 16, I just got a new account, another account. So I'm creating these boards, and now I'm able to kind of automate it. And I almost hate to say automate, because that's almost a paradox to the word, customization.
What we're trying to
but
do,
why not? Why not? How can we automate the content but bring it to the accounts in a way that feels really personalized and customized, and that we have the technology. The technology is there to do that, right? Companies like Demandbase, and we have the technology. So it's also a matter of taking a look at your MarTech stack and see what you have, so that you can have it work for you. Because again, I certainly don't have time to manage all those boards, but this enables me to do that. So it's just kind of an example of think about ways that you can sort of hack the system, but really create a journey that feels pretty customized for people.
Great. So let's talk about technology a little bit. Everyone's always interested in the technologies we're using, and you guys obviously in different areas, in marketing, you're ABM focused, and you're more just, getting set up and going. Yeah. And so why don't we talk to us a little bit about the technologies you're using, or even, where you're hoping to go?
Yeah, gosh, so we are, even just from a baseline, like a CRM and marketing automation perspective, we're Salesforce and Eloqua users. We have explored leveraging ABM platforms like Triblio and Integrate. We actually have campaigns running right now. And we're looking at one thing we're finding out very quickly is that our data is a little bit of a hot mess. And so I'm sure, that we're not alone. I'm not alone in the room. But, just when it comes to, we're looking for additional solutions to, kind of streamline, the inbound that comes in, and making sure that it's optimized, for the sales team to actually, do something with it and understand, and us to be able to do our segmentation in the ways that we'd really like to, so that we can move towards a more personalized strategy. Those are some of the tools that that we're kind of bringing in right now. We are interested as well in what intent data can do for us. So, whether it be a Bombora or Mintico-like solution, these are ones that we've, had some discussions with in some ways, or another. But again, it's just really kind of identifying, like, what, do we need all of this? and can we afford all of this? And what is really going to move the needle? And it may not be now, it may be 6 months from now when we're kind of a little bit more set up. And so that's kind of how we've been approaching some of it right now. There's certain things where we're looking to kind of syndicate and work with our key influencers, because that's a whole nother area. There's a whole governance landscape and associations that we really need to be tying in and working with. And sometimes that's the better way to be syndicating our content with the actual folks who are paying to be part of these associations and who are, oh, by the way, in our buying group. So as long as if we're kind of partnering with them on some of more traditional models, events and conferences, but mostly content creation with them, and then distributing to their audiences, that kind of helps at least give us the mind share. And then we can look into, okay, well, that's starting to build, how can we then flow that into some of these technologies that can kind of help automate all of the things that we're trying to do and scale it, because it's, so we're still kind of in some early stages because the team just really wasn't in the space and establishing themselves as a governance expert.
Right.
It's like, NASDAQ has governance. Who knew that? Yeah. Well, trying to make that a little bit more well known.
Great. I want to come back to influencers, but Kyla, tell us a little bit about the technology you're using, because you seem to have, with ABM and what you are, trying to accomplish every day, it looks like you've got a clear path.
Yeah, I think I have a slide.
Yep.
Do you
I think there we go. Is that it?
Yeah,
Okay.
I get asked a lot what the MarTech stack looks like for Microsoft. And I would say, what I would say here is the caveat is there are definitely areas in which a platform is going to be in more than just one column. So just know that. For example, On24 could certainly be potentially in any column, right? That's webcast, virtual event technology. But I think it's interesting to take a look at it like this. So for me, so what's interesting at Microsoft is the final buying decision resides centrally. So I'm in a group, I'm in a team. I may see a need for a particular platform that I need, but I need to then go pitch that and get that central team that's making those buying decisions to ultimately do any sort of contract, and they have to make sure that it's PII, and there's so many lots of jumping over, like lots of layers. We'll just leave it at that. So I am continuing to try to bring in additional stuff, but we sometimes have to sort of go by some things that we can and cannot do. So this is what we're working on right now and working with, for me in ABM and strategic marketing, I do utilize all these. I will say, especially for this panel discussion, the content platforms, I talked a little bit about Follows. Point Drive is another fantastic, if you guys aren't using Point Drive, LinkedIn Point Drive, that's another great way to disseminate customized content. Sales Navigator is an area that I bring up because my account teams, no surprise, are working really closely within Sales Navigator, and I am sending out smaller campaigns, so maybe it's just to 50 people within an account, and I will use Sales Navigator to do that. Again, I will include whatever that call to action is or whatever kind of communication. I will always get them to go back to the hub though, right? So that hub is sort of the central point of truth for that particular account. So even if I'm inviting them to a big flagship event, I will still go and get them to go to the hub. When they go to the hub, that may be like the big banner, the main sort of key component on the site. But we're really utilizing that so that I as the marketer, without having to go through any of the central stuff through Marketo and all that, I as the marketer can real time see what's going on and really leverage that central point of truth for us. Because the way we have our operations is kind of over in another team through Worldwide. And so sometimes it can be hard for us marketers at such a large corporation to have access to our data real time after we launch a campaign. So we're utilizing some of those sort of hacks to really make sure. And then I'm literally, talking to my accounts each week, and we're discussing what's going on with those platforms.
Right, great. So let's go back to the influencer comment, because I think that's really fascinating, because if we look at how we extend the life of content and just giving it a full ecosystem, everybody, all the buzz is how do I get influencer content? And both of you are in areas where, I mean, you'd mentioned that there's definitely a wealth of influencers, and with you having a very specific industry, it helps you out as well. Are either of you tackling that and trying to work it into your content strategy?
It absolutely is. It's 100% part of our content strategy. We realized, one of the assessments that I made when I joined was that, here we have all of these organizations and publications that speak directly to our target audience. Right. And, one, our competitors are all over them, and we're not. That was very plain to see. And there's it obviously takes a budget to be able to work it in there. But one of the things we did was at the negotiation table, just wanting to have those dollars work a little bit harder for us, where it wasn't just going to sponsor our conference. It was, okay, well, what are we going to do in and around that conference? Because that's okay, fine, that's a given. We'll do some of that. But what are some of the things where we can be placing our subject matter experts at your events, on doing co-sponsored webinars, which are working really, really well for us, actually, in bringing our subject matter experts to the table, because in places where we're not necessarily able to draw that attention because we weren't doing it before. And there, like I said, there wasn't that same brand awareness for what we're doing and the product. So we needed to align ourselves with, Society for Corporate Governance, Corporate Secretary Magazine, directors and boards. Like, these are some of the influencers that we work with, and they talk to directors day after day, and people are literally paying and subscribing to their information and subscribing to their content. We even recently announced early in the year, late last year, that we were partnering with the Governance Institute, which is, a subsidiary of NRC Health. And, it's this major content contributor to the healthcare industry, a segment which we're trying to do a lot more with and expose a lot more of our value to them. So, here we go, have this arm directly to all of these major healthcare and hospital systems that are members of this organizations. And sure enough, we're going to host a webinar with them. We're going to attend their conferences, speak at their conferences, create content with them, and make sure we're distributing it to their members. Right. So those are just ways that we're specifically creating. It's almost like account plans with each and every influencer, where it makes the most sense, and just creating, especially from a budget perspective, a more rounded view at what we can do with that partner or influencer versus we're just going to sponsor an event that their annual conference.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're doing that has been really successful, no surprise, is exec-to-exec engagement, right? So as opposed to the account executive or the salesperson reaching out and inviting them to, we just recently had an HR roundtable, right? Very senior level HR event. We had an HR executive from Microsoft that spoke, as well as some other customers. So what we did is we actually made sure that invitation and that invite came from the HR executive, because we were trying to get executives to go, HR executives to go to this event. So really creating a peer-to-peer network when you can is a great way to sort of engage in demand gen. And we'll do that same thing with finance, et cetera. So we'd really try to do a one-to-one executive engagement, and that's a whole kind of we actually have an executive engagement team, but really utilizing the execs when, especially with your high valued accounts, to make sure that they are going to the meetings, and those are part of their KPIs, right? Our executives have to have oftentimes a sponsorship to one of their accounts, right? So Caterpillar has an exec that is definitely on that account from an HR standpoint. from a finance standpoint, from a marketing standpoint. So our CMO is talking to their CMO, for example. So we make sure and match that all up, and that's going really, really well for us. And that's a big part of it. It's more of an event or a meeting-like situation, but it is about how are you disseminating your content, right? So that email or that phone call, who's going to be doing that? And the engagement, obviously, no surprise, is a lot higher. I would say the area in which I really am hoping to increase for the strategic marketing team is sort of customer case studies and success stories, and how we can continue to create really good content, and that we can then share that out, right? If there's an amazing success or win with an account, a strategic account, say in manufacturing, if we can really create some sort of case study out of that, whether it's, however we decide to disseminate it, maybe it's a quick video, maybe it's a webcast, maybe they speak at one of our events, whatever they're comfortable with, because I do know that sometimes it's hard to get companies, especially really big companies, to be able to show up and sort of be a promotional piece or to sponsor some sort of case study. Right. So enable them to kind of tell you, hey, I'd be comfortable speaking at your event, but I can't do a case study with you. I mean, that happens, right? These companies have really, much like Microsoft, they have specific rules for what they can and cannot do promotional-wise. Right. But I'd love to see that's all about, we heard a lot about that, I think, at this conference, as well as creating fans, right? So the more that you create fans and positive nature, the more I think you're going to be able to roll those up into some really good case studies, because it's all tied together, right? So I'm sort of inspired to start working a little bit more on that through my accounts. And with my accounts, I have relationships with the marketing groups at these companies. And so I'm able to figure out, is there a way that we can work together as well? And as you think about your role, if they're at these companies, if you do have the opportunity to sync with the people that do what you do over at your accounts, it's a fascinating and wonderful way to get in. It's not a sell, but what you're doing is you're being a leader, and you're a solution, and you're creating a fan, and by that you will eventually, that will increase your value as your company.
Yeah, we tend to do that, or try where it makes sense and when it's appropriate. We're NASDAQ. We have many listed companies, and where there's a relationship, where we can be, for example, we did a customer success story on Stitch Fix. Listed company, but the customer success story was about our governance solutions, and it was about their pre-IPO experience. So it was a way not only for our relationship managers who are on the hunt for new listings to leverage for that purpose as well. Right. Like, here's a story where, here's kind of the full picture of all of the different NASDAQ solutions that you could be leveraging and positioning in those ways as well. So that's something that I would totally encourage, is to kind of make those connections internally and externally.
And I think we have time for one more question. So just to kind of wrap things up, I mean, we're always curious, how are you each measuring success? And I know it's not always, I don't think it always has to be in the numbers. I know that's important, but I just love to hear how everyone's doing that.
Yeah, I mean, we have, there's, from a numbers perspective, we have various dashboards within Salesforce that we manage. We're actually revamping our entire lead management framework as we speak, and rolling out what that's going to look like from a sales perspective, and what that's going to look like visually within Salesforce. So we're tracking kind of pretty much anything that you can track within a digital piece, whether it be engagement levels, how much kind of mind share we're getting from engagement and sharing through the sales teams, through our own networks, and then also just kind of one-to-one feedback that we get from the sales teams when we're joining them on some of their calls, on some of their pitches, how they're leveraging things, taking some notes, and try to see how we can be optimizing. There's always kind of the data that we get in from how things are performing digitally. I mean, that's just something that we're going to kind of come in and pull into some of our dashboards on a regular basis.
Great. Kyla?
Oh, I love this question because it,
I know,
because it,
it's
well, it
very
really,
loaded.
really depends. Okay, so there's the obvious, right?
Right.
There's the pipeline influence, all
Right.
there. They're completely, we look at that, of course. But depending on what it is, I always say depending, this is really dependent. I look at anything from net new leads to consumption and adoption. So this might not be relevant for everybody, but for us, for example, if we sell an office to a massive company, if we don't get those people excited about training them and excited about usage and adoption, they're probably not going to renew with us. So that's a big part of it, is taking a look at that and the training and the pieces on that. And then, you know, of course, we are watching what's going on those hubs and looking to identify when there is specific interest in specific kinds of products and services. So that's a big one as well. But for this role, I've been in roles before where it's been a lot more, you know, it's a net new number or it's a, you know, increase in pipeline or something like that. In ABM and strategic accounts, at least in my role with sort of a smaller group of accounts, it's a little bit more fluffy because it can literally almost be you got these people to get a meeting with you
Right.
or they attended some sort of an event because it's so customized and centralized. But we do look at the overall analytics as well, always.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're out of time, so I want to thank you both so much for joining us today, and we hope everyone found it useful.
Yeah.